Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me Abby Gray. In January 2017, Abby turned to writing as a therapeutic outlet, starting a blog when she and her husband Reed were navigating serious health challenges while trying to build a family. With Reed's ongoing health struggles, Abby found solace in her writing and the support of loved ones, creating a solid network of encouragement around her. After 4 years of struggle, Abby and Reed experienced unexpected miracles that changed their lives in ways that no one could have foreseen. Their remarkable journey has become one of hope and inspiration, which Abby now shares in her book, Impatiently Waiting for Miracles. Abby feels called to share their story to bring hope to others facing similar struggles. She advocates passionately for organ donation, infertility awareness, and mental health, and openly shares their experiences to help others find strength and encouragement. Abby's mission can be summed up with these 3 words: inspire, engage, connect. Thank you for joining us, Abby.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. I love that you are wanting to use your experience for the betterment of others, like to be able to shine a light in others' paths that can seem so dark. And these are the
Absolutely.
conversations that society just doesn't want to have. So thank you so much for being willing to share.
A- Absolutely. It helped me to hear other people's stories as we were going through our own struggles. And so now I feel like it's my mission to share our story with other people and be able to return that favor.
Mm. Yeah. And like you said, hearing other people's stories, it makes a difference in like in us in our journey and in theirs as well. It wasn't until I started opening up and sharing about mine that others felt like they had permission to share about theirs, and vice versa. Like when you hear someone sharing about their story, you feel that you can share more about yours and you can feel a little bit more validated in your story as well.
Absolutely. But you feel much less alone.
Absolutely. So that being said, you have gone through a few different things by the sound of it. Do you want to share your story? Do you want to share how you came to being able to putting this book together?
Absolutely. My husband, Reed, and I got married in March of 2014. And in May, we were on our honeymoon and he had some really bad stomach pain. Shortly after we got home, he was diagnosed with a couple of chronic illnesses. He had ulcerative colitis and primary sclerosing cholangitis. And we were told that maybe one day he would need a liver transplant. His chances of developing cancer were much higher. But we didn't, there wasn't a timeline for any of it. They said it would likely happen way down the road. And right now we just manage it. So a couple months later, we started trying for a family. After 9 long months, we finally got our first positive pregnancy test. And we were so excited about that. We immediately shared the news with everyone. I had bought all the gifts for the grandparents already, and I had a whole Pinterest board dedicated to how I was going to share it with everyone. So I already had the gifts done and wrapped. And as soon as we got that positive pregnancy test, I started sharing that news with our closest family and friends. And a couple weeks later, I was going in for blood work and ultrasounds, and they weren't sure if something was possibly wrong, or they said, let's just keep checking. And they were cautiously optimistic about it. And then, about 2.5 weeks later, I was 7.5 weeks pregnant. I went into the emergency room in excruciating pain, and I had a ectopic pregnancy. So they removed my left fallopian tube, which also terminated the pregnancy. And I had been bleeding internally. It was a really scary situation. So that took a little while to heal from. It was really hard. That baby was due Christmas Day. And as you can imagine, Christmas Day was terrible that year. And we were continuing as soon as we got clearance from our doctor. We had started trying for a baby again, but that still did not we still lost our baby. People often will say, "Oh, you can get pregnant again." Okay, but like I wanted that baby too. It doesn't replace my baby. About a year after that, I went to my gynecologist and I said, "Look, it's still not happening. I would really like a referral to a fertility doctor." He said that we had to be trying for a year after the ectopic before he would refer me. So that was June of teen. I'm sorry, June of 2016. And so we went in and met with a fertility doctor. We were getting ready to start IVF. We found out we were pregnant the day before we were supposed to start IVF. And so naturally it was like, oh my gosh, this is a complete miracle. This was supposed to be our baby. This is, what this is meant to happen this way. We're not supposed to go through IVF. This is going to work out. We just knew it. At 9.5 weeks, we went in for one of our weekly ultrasounds and found out that the baby's heart had stopped a week before that. That was, I will never forget that day. It's still like even I've talked about it so many times since then, and I still have a physical reaction whenever I'm talking about it. It was really hard. So it was a miscarriage. And that one hit me somehow, I think, even harder. And it really took me down. But it also showed me that I needed to get outside support from other people who had been through it. So I started going to an infertility group, and it was a couples group. My husband and I went together. That really helped. I was really honest with people around me about how I was feeling about all of it because I think that I tried to fake it after the first one and I had gotten to a really dark place. And 3 months after 12 weeks after the loss, my HCG was finally at 0. So we were able to start trying again. Same thing applies. We wanted that baby. Like we wanted but of course we still wanted to keep trying to have a baby in our arms. Um, so we immediately got pregnant again. And a week later, we learned that baby was not viable and wasn't going to make it as well. During this time, my husband continued to get sicker. And so we were doing more testing on him and figuring out, okay, not only do we need to help him health wise, but also is that contributing to our fertility issues? Turns out it really wasn't contributing to our fertility issues, but he was getting sicker. So a couple months right after our third loss, I started blogging. That's when I started blogging in January of 2017. And it helped me tremendously just to be able to share our story. And like at first, I had a lot of hesitation about it. And my husband is a very private person. And the first time I decided that I was going to do it, I wrote a blog post, I sent it to him, and I was expecting him to go, whoa, like, I don't know about this. And his response to me was, if it helps you, then I'm completely on board. He said, but if at any point this hurts more than it helps, I want you to step away from it. I want you to walk away. And it was just so nice to have that support from him. So I like wrote several blog posts within that first couple of weeks that decided to start doing that, and was sharing every piece of our story, all of the emotions that I was feeling around all of it, the anniversaries of losses, all of the things that people say to you that they don't even realize they shouldn't say to you, shared ways that other people were supporting us, just trying to get that message out as much as possible, and also to help others not feel so alone. It was therapeutic for me, and also to help educate people as to what like how it feels and what you should and shouldn't say in those situations whenever you're talking to people that have been through it. And 2 months after that loss, my husband ended up in the hospital. He had gotten he had a cholangitis infection in his system, and he had become septic. His liver disease had just taken over. And at that point, they said that he needed to get listed for a transplant. So here we are trying to have a family. My husband now needs to be added to the transplant list. And it was a lot. It was a lot all at once, but I am so thankful looking back that I had started the blog when I did, because then I was able to also share what we were going through with the transplant list, and our support system just grew exponentially. I started a Facebook and Instagram and was just sharing it all. It got to the point we always say, like, we are a completely open book, because there's no secrets about anything that has happened to us, because we have learned that it helps so much to have that support around you. And if people don't know what you're going through, they can't support you. So we had a huge group rally around us throughout the process of him getting listed. A couple months after that, we started IVF. And so we were dealing with appointments for his transplant, future transplant. At the same time, we were dealing with IVF blood work and injections. And so there was a lot going on. We definitely had to lean on that support system for through that process. Our first two rounds of IVF resulted in all abnormal embryos. And our third round, we had a chemical pregnancy. And then the second it just didn't work, the second transfer. And then the third one, we were getting ready to go in and transfer our last untested embryo. And we learned about mosaic embryos. One of our abnormal embryos from the first two rounds that we were told were completely unviable, one of those was mosaic, which means it has both normal and abnormal cells. So we decided to take a chance on that embryo as well. The day before, made the decision, went and signed the paperwork. Fortunately, in September of 2018, we found out we were pregnant with twins. Our last two embryos, our last untested, and then our one supposedly unviable but mosaic embryo. And then in the following January of 2019, while I was 21 weeks pregnant with our twins, my husband had a liver transplant. And our story is one where we had so much heartbreak through it all. We had so many times where I could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And but there's no way I could have ever predicted that our story would turn out the way that it did. And so that's why now, like, I feel so compelled to share our story, because there's no way I could have ever written that. Like, the number of miracles that happened along the way, it's amazing to me. I don't wish any of the heartbreak or any of that on anyone. And I know that not everyone gets the happy ending that we did. But I hope that by sharing our story, it shows people in any situation, not just pregnancy loss, not just organ donation, that you never quite know how your story is going to turn out. And you never know what miracles are in store for you. That's when I decided a year and a half ago to write my memoir, Impatiently Waiting for Miracles. So it just shares all of it. All of it's very raw. It's very emotional, and it just shares our whole story, all of the feelings throughout that process.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. There was parts of your story that I could deeply resonate with as well. That my experience was a miscarriage too, and you it it hit different. That was my first loss, but it was more that you don't know. So you feel like
Mhm.
you're walking around thinking, I'm pregnant. And I was telling everyone that I was pregnant. And when I went to the ultrasound, the baby had already died. So
Mhm.
it was like I was telling everyone that I was pregnant, but it was already dead. And that was this big thing that had to try and wrap my head around was I thought that I was pregnant and I wasn't. And I was telling everyone that I was, and I should have known better because I was its mum. I should have known not that it had passed, but
I completely understand that feeling.
yeah, it was just this really weird time. And then
Yeah.
you play back over then all of the moments. You're like, was it this day? Was it that day that it happened? How did I cause it? What did I do? And you don't, unlike other forms of the miscarriages in because there's so many different ways that it can happen, you don't get that warning. So you're just completely blindsided. Like you walk into the ultrasound appointment and you just get told there's no heartbeat. And then in that moment, for me, it's like the room just closed in. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what? No, keep looking, keep checking like that. But I can't be pregnant 1 minute and then not the next. Like what's happening? That so much of your story just it gave me goosebumps as you were telling it, the way that it kept shifting and turning. And there's so much, you would have been navigating so much grief and heartache and pain in your journey, as well as then trying to hold that together for your husband too, then heading into his challenges as well. Like, how did you navigate that, your healing and what you had to do for you, as well as show up for him and be that support person for him as well?
So I tried one thing that I really learned through the process was to focus on self-care. And I'm glad that not that I went through the things that I did necessarily, but that I had the opportunity to develop that skill and understand how important that was prior to him having a liver transplant, honestly. Because had I not, I think that it would have been a lot harder on me. But I was good about saying, okay, this week, I'm going to get a pedicure. That is what I'm doing. I'm going to meet my friend for dinner. And I allowed myself to do those things without feeling selfish about them. But honestly, even though I was good about all of that, a year after my husband's liver transplant and a year after, his transplant was in January 2019. The twins were born in April of 2019. January of 2020, I was diagnosed with PTSD and OCD, because I really thought that as we were going through, I was processing all that we were going through, and I was leaning on our support system, and I was going to the support groups, and I was seeing a therapist, and I was doing all of the things, and it still caught up to me. And that, after the fact, I still hold a lot of guilt about that because it was like a year after we had gotten everything we had prayed for. We had gotten everything that we had fought so hard for. So why was I anxious now? Why was I constantly having this internal battle with myself? I felt guilty because I should be grateful. I should just be grateful and oh my gosh, I have all the things I ever wanted. So why am I a mess inside? And in January of that year, I told my husband, I was like, I got to do something. I can't, this isn't working. So I started seeing a psychiatrist, and that's when I was diagnosed. I started seeing a therapist weekly for EMDR therapy. It's just nothing can really prepare you for those situations, and you survive through them. And then sometimes after the fact, it catches up to you. That's
Yeah,
what it did.
absolutely. And that is exactly what happened with me as well. I wasn't
Um,
diagnosed with PTSD, although what happened with me, and which is why my work ended up taking a shift into the trauma space around pregnancy loss and infertility, was because that was my experience. My loss was very traumatic, although very downplayed by the medical system. It's okay. It's okay. Your body will just do what it needs to do. And meanwhile, I'm bleeding uncontrollably, and I literally thinking I'm going to die. So there was a lot of trauma that was, yeah, just dismissed and downplayed. And it wasn't until I saw a psychologist that she was like, okay, this is trauma. You have experienced trauma. And that validation was amazing. But then also, we're like, what do I do with that? Where do I go? What happens now? And that was years after as well, about probably 2 or 3 years after my loss, that I realized that my body was continuing to go through this pattern of survival. And I was questioning every single day, why am I waking up so anxious? Why can't I handle normal everyday situations? Why is my body on high alert all of the time? And yeah, I completely get that, where you feel like you're doing all of the right things in the moment. I was already seeing a psychologist because when my dad died, I had one that I was seeing all of the time. So I went and saw her and processed my emotions. I was journaling. I was doing all of the things that I knew I needed to witness my emotions. I knew I needed to get it all out and process it. But still, there's such a bigness to it that your body can't process in the moment. And it just takes time for it to unfold and for it to come out. And it's just this ever evolving journey when you feel like, okay, I've got a handle on this thing now, but then your body's okay, now you're ready to see this next thing. And then it just keeps bringing that to you as you keep evolving and going through your process. But I think that the what we have to do is just allow that. And like you said, you feel guilty for it, but you're like, I shouldn't be feeling this. I should be further along. I should be okay now. But I think we've just got to give ourselves permission to just understand that it was big. And while we know it was big, our body thinks our body is still holding on to that bigness.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, my therapist and I like to say you got to quit shoulding on yourself. Quit saying you should feel this way. You should do this. You should like if you feel that way, you feel that way and that's okay. It's okay to have those emotions and to have to process through that. And it was a process. It was definitely a lot of hard work to get through it, but oh my gosh, it was worth it. And I still do at least monthly therapy with that same therapist. And every once in a while, we still go back through the EMDR and we have to process things. And I'm going, why is this bothering me now? I don't, but it does. Your body remembers that stuff.
Mm. Yeah. And there's no rhyme or reason to when it comes or why it comes. There's something that your body recognizes as a potential threat and it comes up, and it just is. And I think and like you said, we got to stop shooting at ourselves but it's because we're so conditioned by society, by you should be further along. They're the ones that, put those shoulds on us. So then we're like, okay, well, I should be. And then we take that on ourselves. And yeah, I know I felt the exact same way as you too when I was pushing my rainbow baby in her pram, trying to get her to sleep. And all I could think of was like, I should be happy. This is what like I've wanted like my whole entire journey. And this is, I should be happy, but I'm not. Like I'm hurting. And there was all of this conflicting emotions that were going on inside. And I kept saying, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should just be grateful. I should just be grateful. But as much as I was grateful, I still had to witness like all of the other things that were coming up too from my loss and the grief and the heartache and the pain. Like it was all still very real and it's all still very much a part of even that next chapter.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to not just feel guilt whenever you can't just completely embrace, "This is what I've always wanted." And I think that's a lot more common than people even talk about, and people are a little even afraid to talk about the fact that, "Okay, I have all these things, but there's still these feelings that are there that I need to address."
1 in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a loss mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't seem to be so spoken about because I feel like it gets shut down a lot. You're like, I don't want to either jinx it or I don't want to bring in like all of these negative emotions. I don't want to feel them because I've got everything that I've wanted. But it's very much like we're human, and to be human is to have these emotions, and to have the emotions means that it's just that it's coming through you. Like it's just energy. It's just coming in, like for you to feel it and to witness it and to release it. It's not like this, it doesn't have to be consuming. And it's, I think again, it comes back to society, like when they're looking onto your life, you're like, you should be happy. Like, why are you feeling sad when why are you feeling grief when you've got everything that you asked for? You're like, you should be happy.
Right.
So then you just take it upon yourself to suppress all of the other stuff that comes up or try to navigate that on your own. And it just creates that more isolation, which if you had, like you said, when you started sharing your story to create a support network around you that deeply understands, that can allow you to go, you know what, like I have everything that I want, but today I feel like absolute crap. And I need someone to see me in that and allow me to express that. And then I'll be okay. In this moment, I need someone to witness the heaviness that I'm feeling.
And I honestly think that's one of the most eye-opening things for me about whenever I started the blog was that there were some days like I put all of my raw feelings out there, and there were some days that I, like, would wake up just feeling so heavy and anxious, and this is before kids, before we knew how our story was gonna turn out and everything, and I would just sit there and type out, like, "Here's how I'm feeling, here's all the things," and in came the flood of support for that, and it was amazing to feel that. Would I do that now? Probably not. I would like to think that I would be able to be as brutally honest as I was then, but I don't ever want to seem ungrateful. I don't ever want it to lessen the amazing things that have happened to us. I don't ever want it to seem like I'm not taking all of that in as I should be. And so, yes, it's absolutely something that's a societal thing. And honestly, I'm nervous with the book coming out. I was very honest with all of the things that were happening throughout the process. And whenever I was diagnosed with PTSD and I started seeing a therapist, I did update my blog about that. And that was really hard for me to share that information because, again, my husband was healthy, my kids were here. And so I had a lot of mixed feelings about that. Now with the book coming out in a couple of weeks, I touch on that, at the end of it, and I talk about the mental health issues that I had after the fact and how that made me feel, and the fact that yes, I still like I am. We are so completely grateful. We were also very privileged throughout the process. We completely understand that. We have the support that we have had from other people is not something that everyone has by any means. And so I never want to detract or lessen any of those things, but I think it is important to be able to say, regardless of where I am now, I'm still going to have hard days. Regardless of the amazing things that have happened, some days I am not going to feel grateful in that moment. I'm going to have a hard time. And that's a hard thing to be able to share because of how other people might perceive that.
It is a very It's a very hard place to be. I think that like being able to share the duality of your experience is would be very refreshing for people to go, oh, you know what? Like I'm having a bad day and it's okay. I don't have to put on this face and be over like joyful when it's actually not what I feel. But it is a very, like you said, it's hard to put that out there without almost expecting some form of judgment from people who are going to be reading it. But on the flip side of that, I also, for me, just for me, I think it would be very refreshing to see someone who has everything that they've wanted also experience hard days. And then you'd be like, oh, okay, it's okay. I can do that too. I can get through this hard day and I can still have the things that I want in my life and I can still be grateful and I can still be happy, but also I can experience this hard emotion and heaviness right now.
I appreciate you saying that because that's really something that I think that's been one of the hardest things for me with putting all of it out there is how whether I get any of that feedback, but if it helps other people to not feel so alone and it helps other people to be able to seek out help and support from others, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. I do love always hearing the story behind where you see people because I think you don't people in where they are and you're like, you look up to them and you're like, oh, they've got all of the things. But I'm like, it's not always been an easy road to get there. And I think sometimes when we compare ourselves and our hardships to where they are in their moment of having everything, we can then feel that we're not good enough to have that. But if you can see the story, if you can hear the story and all of the things that have happened, it can just bring so much realness to it and go, oh, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it too. If she can get through that and all of the things and be where you are and admire where you are, then I can go through my things too.
I hope so. I really do. I've had friends that have said, "Okay, we're struggling with this, but that's nothing compared to what you're dealing with." And I'm like, "No, there's no comparison. We don't have to compare hards. Hard is hard, regardless of where you are, what you're dealing with. It's you don't have to compare it to someone else's situation. And if it's hard for you, it's hard. Period."
Exactly. Hard is hard. And it's your hard is different to someone else's hard, but to them, that's massive and it's huge and it's a big challenge. It does then require so much of that person to get through that, to navigate through that. And I think when we can start to acknowledge that and not downplay our hards and not compare our stories and go, I didn't go through what she went through. So that means I've got to just keep floating by and not actually getting any help or whatever. Like when just start seeing you and your story and what you need to do and acknowledging and validating your story as what you have experienced. If it feels big to you and if it feels hard to you, then it is. And it's okay. And it's okay to feel that. It's okay to seek support like you and what you did, create an outlet, openly talk to someone about it, like what your friends have done to you, but be okay with talking about it and not going,
Absolutely.
oh, my bad, my story is not as big as yours.
Yeah.
I love that you were able to. Do you still blog? Is that something that you still do, or have you shifted everything now towards the book?
So over the last 2 years, I've shifted everything to the book, and I've been a little, I would even say, obsessed with it. But it's been a lot of work, but also very therapeutic. But I do plan to start blogging again and even revamping some of the blogs that I had written before and adding to those because it was so therapeutic for me. And honestly, now that the book is written and it's done and ready to be published, I can feel that void for me where I'm like, okay, but I want to get it out more. I want to get those emotions out more. And I definitely think I'll be getting back to blogging very soon.
Yeah, I think that was, and it is a very therapeutic way of getting out everything and being able to see it on a computer screen or on paper or whatever. Like you can start to really allow yourself to process it. So I love that you can start shifting everything back. And in that way, too, like in the blog, you'll be able to see your journey from where you've started to now that the book will be released, and then your journey after that as well. So,
Absolutely. I went through and reread one right before we got on the call just to remind myself, bring myself back there, like of those emotions.
mm,
Because yeah, it's definitely it has helped me a lot.
and it is, yeah, it's like a timeline of your grief, of your challenges, and it's also a place that you can come back and see how far you've come, see what changes and shifts you've been able to make in that time and how much you've allowed yourself to grow through the pain. And I think that's like you said, you didn't feel there was any light at the end of the tunnel for so long. When you can read back over something like that, you can start to see that light. But then in the moment, you're like, it's completely dark and I don't know how I'm going to navigate this. But in those moments, there is growth. In those moments, you made choices to help you along the way, some big and some small. And you were able to create the light then and create all of the things that you wanted for yourself and your life.
Absolutely. With the huge help from our support system. I have to keep like
Yeah.
because yes, I couldn't have got through a lot of it without the support that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very, I think, vital piece to a healing journey is to be able to find that support network, whether it's one person, whether it's five people, whether it's 10, just find the person that can deeply understand and give you that someone to talk to, someone that'll listen to you, someone that won't judge you or give you their opinions, but just be able to help you and hold you in that time as well. Is it's so very important.
Absolutely.
just as we're wrapping up, what's one thing that you wish you knew before experiencing pregnancy loss and infertility and everything that you did on your journey?
That you're never alone. And that's really the biggest lesson that I learned through all of it is that even whenever you feel alone, you aren't. There are people that you can reach out to. There are even the community that I created even on Instagram through the infertility community. Like some of those girls I'm so close with now, and some of them we've never met in real life, and they're all across the country, the world. And there were times whenever I realized it, but then there were times whenever I also just felt completely alone. Yeah,
Yeah. And it can feel like such an isolating journey that no one is going to understand you, but it can feel like a big thing to look outside to find that support, but just to know that when you do make that decision to find people, that you aren't alone, and you can find so much support in these communities.
absolutely. That's one great thing about social media now is you can, even if there's not anybody in your direct circle that you know of that's gone through it, you can find someone and you can connect with people. And I know there are a lot of good people in this world.
Hmm.
I know that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people find you?
So on Instagram, I'm under Abby Gray Writes. So Writes. And that's Abygray. I guess I should specify because there are different ways to spell both my first and last name. And same thing on Facebook, Abby Gray Writes. And then my website is abbygraywrites.com.
Yeah, and I'll pop all of the links under the episode in the show notes as well so that people can find you.
Thank
And where will your book be available?
It will be available on any major retailers, book retailers' websites. So it'll be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's also available through my website.
Perfect. I'll make sure to put all of that in there as well. Thank you so much, Abby, for being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.